space for others,
Right.
because this field requires a lot of self-reflection and a lot of your own self-healing first.
Right.
Otherwise, other stories can be very triggering, right? So that's
Yes.
how my journey has been.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
A little, what like people do get confused about psychologists, you know. Right. So, what
Yeah.
are the main characteristics that you have to withhold within yourself
Oh,
to actually? I was curious to know
sure.
what.
Yeah. So what do I sort of have to work on myself in order to hold space for the other?
Yes.
Oh, that's so we are so trained and we're so conditioned to like give more than what we have. I think especially as women also from a very young age, like if you're born with a certain genital, and then the society thinks, okay, you are for giving, you are for taking, and we somehow come under the giving category. So as a
Yes.
counselor and as a woman who's a counselor, I think one of the main thing is to know boundaries, to
Right.
also accept the limitation of how much you can provide as a human being, because some of us, yeah, as in any profession, I think you want to be the best, so you're like, what more can I give in order to be the best? But at the same time we forget how much it affects our own mental health as a counselor. So I think one of the greatest things to sort of like find a discipline in is boundaries, and then to hold a space of vulnerability.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, what is the most common concern you've heard from women? I'm sure a lot of women come to you,
Right.
and I also see that we have a few questions from our friends, like how to analyze compatibility. So we can take the questions in the end of the live session.
Sure.
So, what is the most common concern you've heard from women during
So,
your experience?
yeah, there are many, but if I were to choose two of the most common and the most painful ones, I would say one is that to finally understand that there's a systemic sort of a structural oppression that's happening, and that's why internally we have a lot of self doubts and a lot of pain. That sort of information a lot of people don't have, and so they tend to believe that there's internally, intrinsically something wrong with them, and that's why they're failing to process life and get through life. It's deeply saddening to sit and watch someone go through that, because like when we study, or even if you just read up, you'll actually, or even if you reflect as an adult for a while, you actually understand how tough the system makes it for you,
Yeah.
right? And the other thing that I've seen is also women who have worked a little bit through their self and healing. When it
Right.
comes to leadership positions, they again, there's this whole self doubt that occurs to them because they're so not used to being in the leadership position in a healthy way, and they
Yeah.
also get so judged for that as well. There's this
Yeah.
intrinsic sort of a belief where they feel they're not good enough. That is also
Yes.
something that
No, even
is very
the
painful.
beginning of the leadership journey is so draining because there is a lot of intimidation around you. You have to be born as a girl, and then you have to be born as a woman and as a wife, and then as so many different things, and then finally be reborn as a leader again.
Yes.
So everything is not going in line for women. So
Yeah.
they have to play every role very objectively.
Yes, which is one of the main thing. I think first thing, if you just see, if you're taken as like a person and you're
Yes.
placed, first you're seen as a source of reproduction, then you're seen as a sexual sort of a being, then you are seen as a relational being. What is your role with me? Are you my sister? Are you my mother? Are you my teacher? Etc. Then finally, we are okay to somehow address that women are intelligent beings. So
Yes.
there are these layers that we have to work through within our own self and sort
Yes.
of psychoeducate others. So I
Yeah.
guess like by the time we're like in our late 20s and 30s is when the real sort of, oh, something's not wrong with me. Let me reflect. I think this is has to do something with the system and not just
This.
me.
Yeah.
It's something that happens around that age.
That's very true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, going to our next question, I'm
Sure.
using storytelling as a medium to make an impact through impact hours. So, through
Right.
impact hours, I speak to disruptive, groundbreaking men and women who are
Yeah.
working towards women empowerment through their
Yeah.
businesses or through their products.
Yeah.
So, during this experience of storytelling, I see that most of the women are very scared to reveal their stories.
Yeah.
Even women, and this is not just the women who come up to you,
Yeah.
because somebody who's able to come to you is a completely different scenario. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is somebody who's very strong, whom I'm going to for asking a story, they are like they are not ready to share the most important part of the
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. That could be. Um, that could mainly be. I mean, I think here I'll also like to touch on the neurological aspect of what happens to us.
Mm.
So, say from the time you're, firstly, all of us have different neurological system within us, which means the sort of, we all have these common brain chemicals, etc., that structure and functionality of our nervous system is set in place. But the way we think, the way we react, how resilient we can be, how vulnerable we can be, how sensitive we are, all of that depends on our individual sort of neuro system that's there. Now, that put together with people who have been in an environment where they haven't received support for self expression, and then when we are giving them the space to express themselves, there's a lot of shame that comes into the picture. And shame, not just at the emotional, mental level, you can actually feel it in your body. That the sort of like tightness in your body in itself does not help you articulate your story. And that is so deeply embedded that it takes a lot of, again, safe space, or you have to be in a safe state of mind in order to even reveal your story to someone. And I think that's probably one of the main reasons. The shame that we have in our body, including you, me, I mean, all of us as a collective, that we
Yes.
store, it takes a lot of inner work to gently and very, very gently to come out of it. I think that that could be one of the biggest reasons.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said.
Yeah, thank you.
For women in India, the transfer happens from father to husband to son, as if it's as if woman is an object. How
Yeah.
far have women gotten in voicing their opinion? And when does the self discovery begin? Because if you ask me, the
Yeah.
self discovery should begin in your teens. Like
Yes, rightfully.
it should, yeah, like go out or traveling or doing anything that you love or passionate about or reading
Yes.
anything. So
Yes.
there's no chance for women to think about self discovery at all.
Yes.
So what is your comment on that?
So, rightfully, I think teenage, that phase is the time to sort of, be this rebellious or try to be against that as an expression in itself for someone's growth. I feel like just like how there's, when you plant a seed in the soil, it grows against gravity to find its own sort of, life, its own sort of set of lungs. I feel that's what happens during teenage. And later in India, I don't think even a 25-year-old woman that's like past you, you're
Adult
proper adult, that time also you're treated as not
baby.
even a child. Yeah, it's like a child, but you also have to take the responsibility of the entire family. So that
Yes.
hypocrisy and that sort of, contradicting qualities that they want in a woman confuses a woman herself. It's almost as if, so there's this book that I read, it's called Women Who Run with the Wolves. Amazing book. The author tends to talk a lot in metaphors and through stories. So there's this particular story where she mentions that when a woman or a girl child is born, so initially the father, being the patriarch or the so-called head of the family, very beautifully and manipulatively sort of cuts the hands of the girl child. And our hands is the medium of functionality, is the medium to be independent. And then that child or that sort of a skeletal structure that does not have hands is then passed on to the husband. So now she has to completely rely on the husband economically, financially, emotionally, at every level. So for this woman who's grown and then understands the pain of dependency, or usually when there's a case of abandonment is when self-discovery or going within happens for some of us. Then she starts to realize what was done to her as she was growing up. And
Yes.
then she starts owning her body and she realizes that she has these set of hands. Till then she's meant to be blinded, right? And once she realizes that she has her hands, she's then able to mold her life and like get
Yes.
on board.
But
Yeah.
after that, also, there is a lot of judgment. There
Yeah.
is being called bossy, or again, what we spoke about.
Right.
It is very hard for a woman to separate herself from the rest
Yeah.
of the world
Yeah.
and think. So, how is the
Yeah.
system impacting the physiological setbacks on a woman?
Okay. So here again, so there's this workshop that I'd gone for, and in there they spoke about this sacred circle of heterosexuality. It was a gender and sexuality workshop. So the sacred circle of heterosexuality, the cycle of childbirth and going on is all about just the particular sperm and the legacy of that sperm, right? So when we come back to a woman realizing her worth or discovery, and in that particular system, just one example I'd like to give what happens is that when you're treated, okay, actually, in fact, before I address this, I would just like to sort of put it out there to everyone who's watching that very openly we'll be obviously acknowledging the violence that's there in the system. And so maybe while we're acknowledging the violence that's prevailing, it can also trigger some of us, the ones who are listening to this. So it could be an emotional trigger, it could be a trauma trigger. I'm just going to take a minute to make this a safe space for everyone.
Sure.
If you feel emotionally things are coming up for you, that's okay because it comes up and it releases. But if you feel within your body there's a great amount of discomfort that's coming, especially when we're acknowledging violence in the system, I would like you to do very simple sort of coping techniques. Either you could place your hand on your chest or on your gut, or you could go drink a glass of water. Because when you do that, you're regulating your body, and when you regulate your body, you're able to be in the present. Because when trauma gets triggered for some people, it can have a very sort of troubling effect on their body. I'm just putting this out there so that when we talk about it, you feel safe, and it's very important that you feel safe. Now, coming to what happens in the system and how how it sort of affects a woman. Say from childhood, if a person is trying their level best but is not getting acknowledged, not getting appreciated, there is this sense of a deep low self-esteem and not even knowing your worth that happens for sure. But neurologically, brain chemical wise, there is no pumping of dopamine, no pumping of any positive good feeling hormones. So then your brain is hijacked by all of these sort of numbing hormones or even stressful hormones that continuously keep you in a place of feeling low. And hence, for most women who live in this kind of a system, it could also be men, I'm not saying, but because today we're addressing women's issues. So what then happens is when you want to sort of feel good about yourself, you do not know how to regulate yourself. And in a system where you're asked to come out and you're asked to be this very enriching person, when your own sort of neurological biochemical cocktail is so negative, it's very hard for a person to even have a positive thought, which is one of the main reasons why I think like it comes out in the form of anxiety and depression, and in your body as well. There are certain body parts that we might not like. All of these are actually manifestations of the sort of oppressive environment that we live in. And you can actually feel it in your own body, right? The breathlessness, the tightness, the sense of fear. And for no reason, these things come up for some of us. It's all the trauma and also intergenerational trauma that we go through. As women, as collective, trauma actually passes, and it could just be a story that you heard of maybe your grandmother going through abuse, and you'll be able to very deeply relate with it because somewhere you just feel like you've lived it in your body. That's how powerful intergenerational trauma is. Yeah.
So, how can one, like taking this into a little more deeper perspective,
Sure.
how can one, being a woman with predefined expectations, there are so many expectations as you
Yeah.
spoke about before.
Yeah.
So, with these kind of predefined expectations, how can women introspect oneself to soul searching and healing?
Oh. So for me, it began with my course, and then I think that helped me to hold space when I went deeper into this insightful meditation called Vipassana meditation. It's sort of this 10-day silent meditation, and then reading a lot of books and also being around women who are wise. being around women who are comfortable talking about their bodies not in just a sexual manner, that in itself is a celebration for sure, but also experiencing yourself within and how it feels. These are definitely some of the ways of or these are sort of the catalysts that will help you in your self discovery. But again, like I said, I think usually for most of us, self discovery only happens when we are at the painful most, when we feel the most abandoned by everyone, and we feel like, oh, this person should have helped me, that person should have held space for me, and when they don't because of their own reasons, that is the moment when we feel like, okay, now let me look at my inner resources.
Yeah.
For most, yeah.
I think solitude is very underrated.
Yeah, really.
Yes.
Definitely. Yeah.
What are the superpowers of a woman according to you? Define the aura of the mental strength
Yeah.
demonstrated by a woman.
Yeah. I mean, I think just the amount of things that we spoke about, and yet, if at this generation, people like you and I, and whoever, all of us as a collective, we are able to still uh, go through the trauma or access the trauma and yet want to do something good with our lives, in itself speaks volumes, where we're still choosing to give and choosing to love, but from a space of help, not from a space of force, not from a space of, okay, I have to do this, I have to be the selfless human being. No, but from a very good space of, here, I'm also going to hold you through this, shows
Yes.
the mental strength. Coming to some of the superpowers, I believe, I mean, this could be again for men and women, but I've seen this a lot more in women and in our interactions. I think there's a great aesthetic sensibility that women have when it comes to emotion, mental, it could be anything. Also, another superpower is this combination of sensibility with vulnerability that we're able to hold together. Like the sort of window of tolerance that we have is a huge asset. It's a huge skill when you're able to mentally and emotionally engage with people. I think that speaks volumes about how sort of evolved we are as beings.
So, do you think that women are using their potential to the fullest? Because I've spoken to a few people before, and
Yeah,
some people say that women need empowerment, and some
yeah.
say that no, women need not be empowered, they're already empowered. And some say that the world is ready, the women are not yet. What's your take?
And then some say the women are ready, but the men are not yet ready to have
Uh,
empowerment. But I mean, I'd just like to acknowledge that there are some really wonderful men, I'm sure, like our respective partners and are some really
yes.
good friends who are equally or whatever. It's not even about equally. They're just so sensible and
Yeah,
sensitive
they're
as well,
just
right?
like us, and they're just
Us,
another.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's no question of gender or question of what genitals do we have or none of that. It's
And
just
absolutely see how happily we are able to talk about it.
correct. But we
Yes.
also know that there's a huge segment, number of men who believe otherwise. And so then to deal with them, I don't know, it just takes a different level of strength. But I'm sorry, I forgot what the question was. I think my mind
The
went into
question was,
something else.
are the women able to use their potential to the fullest? So
If
is
I'm
the
being
world.
No, I think it's such a slow journey. It's really very slow. And I don't think we ourselves have realized our full potential, to be very honest, because I told you of this sort of emotional, neurological cocktail that is there within us. Each day at a time, we realize something new about ourselves. We learn new healthy coping mechanisms to take care of our anxiety or to take care of things in our own lives. That to even reach that potential, I think takes time, let alone the world accepting it. I think we really have to, like, like make our space, and then once you've taken your space in your body, in your mind, I think no
It's
one can
unstoppable.
sort of, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And my last question to you is, how do you wish to scale what you're doing? Because you have amazing thoughts, that's like lovely work you're doing. How would you want
Thank
to
you.
scale this work?
So I truly believe in there's something called somatic psychotherapy, or sort of healing to do with the body, because see, there's this part of our brain called the hippocampus. It's a small part which deals with emotional memories. And then there is this part called the amygdala, which stores the body memories and the trauma memories, the long-term memories that we are not feeling very easy to touch upon.
Okay.
So, yeah. So what happens is that as we are living and talking, we're okay. But when it comes to the sort of long-term memories that are put in place right behind here near the brainstem, that does not take place consciously through speech. That trauma sort of comes out through our body, through the relationships that we choose, through finances, through what we allow in our lives and do not allow. So that much is the sort of wisdom and information in our bodies. So how I scale or how I see myself is more to do with somatic healing, where you involve your body in the healing process and not just your mind and not just words.
Right.
Because I think that's where we hold ourselves in our body. So that's so I see myself sort of doing more movement therapy or holding space where a person, it can be a woman or a man, is able to really use their body as a tool for healing.
Right.
So it's called somatic psychotherapy, but that's something that we can read upon. I'm on my own
Sure.
journey on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, Kavya, we just had one question which one of our friend has asked on the live. So the
Sure.
question was how to analyze compatibility. Do you have any
Compat.
comments on that? Compatibility, yes.
So this person is talking about compatibility with this other person who they are attracted to, or I'm
I
guessing
think,
that's what they mean, right?
yeah, I'm just trying to go back to the question. What is the best way to analyze compatibility? Is the question. I
Okay.
think we can
Sure.
innovate
I
around.
think the first thing, even before you see if I like, he likes, or she likes, even before going into that, I think a little bit of self reflective sort of work on what are some of my needs emotionally, mentally, physically, sexually, and if spiritually, if you're there. From that needs, accepting your needs in one sense, and also knowing how much of this am I able to fulfill for myself, that clarity. And the second set of questions would also look like what are some of the should, I should be like this, he should be like this, what are some of those shoulds that the society has put into me or whatever I believe, making like a set of that and sort of cutting those shoulds and writing could. I mean, he should pamper me all the time. He could pamper me all the time. Or similarly, the shoulds that you put on yourself. I should be a partner who will fulfill all his desires. I could be the partner who fulfills some of his desires. So, in these two self reflective things, what you're doing, one is A, you're figuring out what your needs are so that you'll better be able to negotiate it. B, when you realize your should can turn into could, you will also give a lot of flexible sort of area for that person. And from this, if you feel like there's something common between both of you, then I think you're highly compatible. But it needs obviously self reflection first and then talking to him or her or them about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that should answer.
All right.
So thank you so much for being here, Kavya. It was amazing. I'm sure everybody
Thank you.
enjoyed the could word really make a big difference? Could word really makes a big
Yeah, it
difference?
does actually. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, by the way, that's not something that I created, just for everyone who's watching. There's this amazing thinker person called Louis Hay, Louisehay. She has some of these amazing self reflective worksheets and workbooks. In that, one of the thing that I just shared is that, and I also found it very powerful for myself, so I thought it would be a good thing to share. Yep.
Okay, Kavya. We'll see you
Thank
again.
you.
Thank you.